In a recent video, we went into depth in analyzing the Jedi Order's philosophy as it was immortalized in their most important mantra, the Jedi Code. However, the Jedi Order wasn't alone in creating a staunch ideological framework for their followers to follow. The Sith Order, diametrically opposed to the Jedi in many ways, also had their own code in which they distilled thousands of years of teachings into a few simple lines. In today's video, we'll be analyzing the Sith Code and how the Sith chose to view themselves and their place in the galaxy around them.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In the beginning, there was no code planned out for the Sith. Let us explain. When the original trilogy aired, much of what we now know as quintessentially Star Wars wasn't a thing yet. Most Star Wars lore, whether it was philosophical, mythological, historical, or societal, was added into the franchise bit by bit over the following decades. The Sith Code itself wasn't brought into being until 2003, when David Gaider, a writer working on the Korriban section of the Knights of the Old Republic game, asked Lucasfilms if the Sith had a mantra. When he was tasked with creating one, Gaider took the Jedi Code, reversed its tenets, and added some good old Nazi philosophy into the mix to produce the code we all know and love today. Meta lore aside, the Sith Code came to be in 6900 BBY, when the Dark Jedi heretic Sor-Zu Sin, the shadow hand to the first Dark Lord of the Sith, created it on Ziost. The Sith liked it so much that for the next several thousands of years, it remained mostly unchanged. Even Darth Bane himself kept the Sith Code the same, precisely because it was spot on at expressing the core philosophy of the Sith, regardless of how each iteration of the Sith Order went about realizing it. The original Sith Code, known as Kotsisajak, was written in the Sith language. Although it remains intact, we'll skip it in favor of a language we believe more of our fans are fluent in. Basic. The code, as written by Sin and taught by Bane, reads as follows. Peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. On a surface level, the Sith Code, much like the Jedi Code, seems to be very straightforward. The Sith were famous for their relentless pursuit of power and for their obsession with being top act dog in the galaxy. At first reading, the Sith Code seems to be no more than a basic set of instructions for any Sith wishing to pursue ultimate power. This, however, would be nothing but a superficial conclusion. Much like its sister code, the Sith Code was never meant to be understood with just a surface-level reading. It's important to remember that, evil or no, the Sith was still a religious organization with millennia-old philosophy, and like any order worth its salt, the Sith hid their deeper teachings behind simple-sounding mantras. Because what the Sith Code has to offer isn't just simple instructions. Hidden between the lines of the code lie the deeper truths of how the Sith viewed the galaxy, the Force, and their place at the center of it all. As we mentioned earlier, Sor-Zu Sin created the Sith Code by perverting or outright rejecting the teachings of the Jedi. Despite how opposing these two ideologies are, however, they share two core similarities. First, both orders built their mantras so that each line built on the one before it, finishing in a climax that encompassed their outlook on the Force. Second, they both set their outlook on peace as the foundation of their philosophy. The first lesson of the Sith Code is that peace is a lie, there is only passion. It's not a coincidence that both codes begin with peace. As we discussed in our video on the Jedi Code, the Jedi base their entire philosophy on the building blocks of peace, of being able to sit down, take a deep breath, put aside your emotions, and look at the bigger picture. The Sith, on the other hand, reject this outright. Given that Saw Zeus and many of her time were fallen Jedi, it's no coincidence that, with their first lesson, the Sith sought to diametrically oppose the Jedi philosophy. To the Sith, it isn't about taking control of one's emotions. On the contrary, the Sith Code instructs to let your emotions run wild. Passion here refers to any strong emotions that drive an individual forward, such as rage, love, hatred, or grief. Expressing these strong emotions was what the Sith believed to be the foundation of strength, which brings us to the second line of the code. Through passion, I gain strength. Unlike most lines of the Jedi Code, this is meant quite literally. It's important to remember that the Sith relied on the dark side of the Force, which was different in nature to the Force itself. The dark side was a corruptive influence that fed on the user's deepest fears and emotions. The stronger these emotions were, the more the user could call on the dark side, and the more of its power it could channel. Thus, by letting their passion blaze within them, the Sith were essentially getting a Super Saiyan power boost, which brings us to the third lesson. Power. To the Sith, strength is a prerequisite to power. Where strength was the raw potential energy one could wield, power was the result of using that strength. Strength by itself was useless if you didn't then use that strength to exert influence on others. The Sith believed in the rule of the mighty, and this line encompassed that belief. Those with the most strength were able to rise above their peers and wield power. The eternal fight for the seat of the Dark Lord of the Sith is an excellent example of this Sith doctrine in action. There were many strong Sith Lords, but only those with the greatest strength and cunning could position themselves to rule the Sith. Through power, I gain victory. The fourth line of the Sith Code instructs that once you wield enough power, you are able to be victorious in whatever it is you are seeking. It equates amassing as much power as possible to winning. When you have enough power, you can do anything. In KOTOR, we get some additional context. Not all victories are worthwhile. Only those gained through superior power are worth celebrating. Victories gained through other means, such as deceit, are only an illusion of victory, and thus worthless. The final two lines introduce the most crucial element of the Sith philosophy. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. Power isn't the goal. Victory isn't the goal. Both of these were never the true objective of the Sith. The true goal was always to be able to break free of the shackles of our galaxy, of all restrictions, and make their vision a reality. And therein lies the true core of the Sith ideology and the true contrast between their doctrine and that of the Jedi. The Jedi Code, seen in its entirety, tells a story of how to let go and trust yourself to the will of the Force. It preaches letting go of the clamor of emotions, of prejudices, of external voices threatening to blind you so that you can hear the voice singing within you and within the universe around you. It teaches that the only way to live is by submitting yourself to the Force and letting it guide the universe into balance. To the Jedi, the goal was to restore balance. The Sith, on the other hand, defy the will of the Force with their very existence. The dark side is a corrupting influence that seeks to consume balance and throw the galaxy into chaos. In a way, the Sith were no more than the dark side's pawns, vessels through which it could corrupt the Force. To the Sith, this was a worthy sacrifice, despite the heavy physical and mental toll, because it gave them their heart's deepest desires. Freedom. Now, freedom doesn't initially seem like a bad thing. All beings should be equally free to make their own choices. But to the Sith, freedom wasn't just about being the baddest Bith in the galaxy. It wasn't just about amassing so much power that no one could tell you what to do. There were certainly elements of that, as the hundreds of stories of power-hungry Sith tell us. But there was more to it than that. The Sith's quest for freedom didn't stop there. What the Sith really wanted was freedom from the will of the Force. Freedom from submitting to the most fundamental, universal laws of nature that bind all life together. It's no coincidence that immortality, aka defying the fundamental principle that death is an unavoidable part of life, was one of the most sought after powers. By channeling the dark side and allowing it to consume them, the Sith were trying to corrupt the Force enough so that they could impose their own will over that of the Force. Sometimes that took the form of Sith prolonging their life centuries past their natural lifespans. Other times, that manifested as twisted Sith-spawn abominations being brought into the galaxy by twisting the principles of life itself. That was the freedom the Sith sought, the freedom to remake the galaxy into their image and subject it to their rules. The chains that victory broke weren't just the mortal shackles men place on their fellow man, but also the rules of nature that keep us all in harmony. In the end, what it boils down to is sacrifice versus selfishness. The Jedi taught how to submit to the higher power that was the Force, letting it guide all life, whereas the Sith taught how to defy that higher power and take its place. Where the Jedi deferred to the Force as something greater than themselves, the Sith saw it as a mere tool to be used in achieving their deepest desires. And that is why, despite millennia of conflict, the two orders were never able to reconcile their differences, instead choosing to do their best to wipe the other out. But what do you think? Which of the two codes do you believe better encompasses their order's teachings? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.